Hello, welcome to my video introduction to your realtor. My name is Vita Novak with Howard Hanna, and I'm making this video just as a brief introduction to tell you a few things about the process of buying a home. Getting into buying a home is a huge investment. It's quite a long and elaborate process with a lot of little ins and outs involved and all sorts of things, and so I wanted to discuss a few of those parameters just to educate people who may not be very familiar with the process, so that everyone's comfortable with how you actually step into it, what you encounter, and what's involved. So just a couple of items that we'll cover today in this brief video. Just want to take a few minutes here. Again, my name is Vita Novak. I've been licensed real estate agent since 2016. And dissecting all the components of this process to be able to guide you as a buyer through the process effortlessly and smoothly, make sure that there's no surprises and everything fits your expectations, you enjoy and have a pleasurable home buying experience. So first, a brief disclaimer. I'm not giving any legal advice. Please consult your accountant or attorney for specific tax and legal advice. I will report everything here to the best of my knowledge and awareness and my professional expertise. Everything I discuss here should be pertaining to licensed law in the state of Ohio and should be considered as such. So thank you for consulting my expertise and relying on me for your realtor knowledge. So first thing I wanted to discuss briefly is agency, and this pertains to who represents whom in a transaction. Generally and most commonly these days in a real estate transaction, you will have an agent that represents the buyer and an agent that represents the seller. So each professional independently represents the best interests of their client and who they represent on the deal. And it's important that you know and understand what those relationships are and who is really obligated to look out for your best interests. This is especially critical when you discuss, for example, consider wandering into an open house and maybe just decide to write up a contract with that agent you see there. Well, that's great and they would love to do that for you, but that's the person that actually represents the seller first. And so that's the person whose interests they're going to be representing primarily. So we'll talk about the forms that relate to the disclosures of those things, because we are legally obligated to let you as the consumer know who is representing whom in these contracts. But you must know for yourself, who you're representing. So many buyers do choose to work with their own buyer's agent for that purpose. That way they do have somebody who's really on their side and exclusively on their side. And while it is legal for one agent to represent the buyer and the seller in a contract, that sometimes can have complications when it has to be determined whose interest is really being served the best. And of course, having the person required to keep certain information on both sides of the transaction confidential, even though they actually have more information than may be disclosed or may be permitted to be disclosed. So for that reason, many people do choose to work with a separate buyer's agent, and in a lot of cases it probably is a good idea. You look at our attorney friends, for example, they think that law is pretty terrible because they're totally not allowed to represent two sides of a legal battle. And so if you consider it from that perspective, it may make sense to have somebody individual. So a couple of forms to discuss, and there are actually many forms, so we'll dig more into those later, not to make into a whole huge session here today. But one that I wanted to discuss is the Consumer Guide to Agency Relationships. So this is a simple disclosure that every agent is obligated to present to their client or potential client at a first meaningful interaction, at a showing or something else. Basically, all it's doing is describing what I just described briefly. What is that agency, what it means by who represents whom, and what their obligations are to you as the client. If you sign a form like this when you're making an offer, your agent did not follow the license law. This is something that has to be done prior to actually starting a relationship of any kind. So the key with this is that there is actually no obligation whatsoever. It's not a contract, it's simply a disclosure, and so we do ask that you sign it and go for it. Sometimes the consumer agency relationship form is tied to an affiliated business arrangement disclosure. That would happen if the brokerage offers other services such as insurance or mortgage services or so forth. But the consumer guide to agency relationship, it's simply a disclosure form. Now, if you feel uncomfortable and you say, I just met you, why are you asking me to sign something? That's okay. You don't have to sign it. You can actually refuse to sign it. But then the agent has to, properly document on their own that they did give you the disclosure on this date, and they have to do all that extra homework to be able to prove that they did disclose it to you. So it's much simpler if you just go ahead and sign it. Again, no obligation whatsoever that does not incur any obligation on your behalf. Now, another form then that I will mention is the exclusive buyer agency. This form does create an obligation for you to work with a specific realtor. It is not required, but it's certainly an honorable commitment for you as a consumer to make to an agent that will be investing a great deal of time with you. And so that's always a nice thing to do. Kind of lets you make a commitment to them and say, I like you, I think you're going to do a good job for me, and I'd like to give you this exclusive buyer's agency. So again, it's not required, it's not mandatory, but it's a nice thing to do for an agent because then they all know that you are really, you're serious about the process and you want to dive in with them. And that may or may not, it may gain you a little, stronger level of commitment on their part as well. So that's always good. A word of caution on that, and this sometimes can be confusion caused between the exclusive buyer agency or the consumer guide to agency relationships, and some people may try to create such a confusion. I will say, for example, if an agent tells you that you have to sign this before they can show you houses, don't walk, run, because that's pretty shady. I will say, because they may kind of lump that together with the consumer guide, which they are obligated to disclose to you, and try to get you to sign an exclusive buyer's agency too. And I really maybe won't make an accusation somebody would intentionally try to mislead you as a consumer to sign this kind of a thing, but it's happened before, and it's a possible thing to look out for. So when you see exclusive buyer agency, this is something that you should be considering. Okay, I would be creating an obligation to continue working with this person, and if you have a great realtor that you're working with, if you call me up, of course you want to sign that because I'm going to do an excellent job for you, and you want to be able to do that. But you make the decision on your own, and you decide that you're gonna go ahead and make that happen. So those are two items kind of early in the process of the home buying process that I wanted to discuss today. I'm not going to go any deeper now, but we'll continue on the series to discuss a few more things that could come up, and we'll continue on from there. Thank you for watching the video. Any questions, please call me, 440-231-6247, or email vitanovak@howardhanna.com, website vitanovak.howardhanna.com. Check out all the information about me there, and plenty of ways to get in contact with me. Thank you very much.